granted. Thank you. We'll now move to question time. I call Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Yesterday, Australians were shocked and disgusted by the anti-Semitic threats made by nurses at Bankstown Hospital. The New South Wales Health Minister said both nurses had been stood down immediately. However, it currently remains possible for both individuals to practice in any other state or territory. What steps has the Prime Minister taken to ensure these people are not able to practice as health professionals today in any location across our country?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and I thank the senator for the question. And she, I agree with her that we were shocked, and I think I made some comments yesterday about how shocking it was to have that kind of vile hatred, that anti-Semitism expressed in the way that it was. And I think we've seen universal condemnation, including across the political spectrum, and also I note today there was the relevant trade union, the AN, the Nursing and Midwifery Federation, have engaged in a public rally in support of the appropriate values that healthcare should have at its heart. I think I answered that aspect of the question yesterday, Senator. I made reference to the fact that if there that any reduction or taking away of a licence in a state would be reflected in terms of a national regulator. I think I read to you the advice that I have received, which is that there is a national scheme for regulating the safety and quality of health practitioners that includes nurses and the relevant authorities, New South Wales.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. I think my question was very specific.
What is it that you're on your feet for?
In terms of
Senator Ruston, why are you on your feet?
Relevance.
Okay, you didn't say that.
Oh, sorry, I may have been mumbling. My apologies.
Thank you.
Relevance. I was just seeking relevance in terms of the response that we've received so far from the Minister in relation to what action the Prime Minister is taking to make sure that these people are not practising anywhere else in Australia. I think we deserve to know the answer.
Thank you, Senator Ruston. The Minister is being directly relevant to your question. Minister Wong.
Well, I think I'll take the interjection from Senator Cash because she is quite. She is pointing. She wants to talk about the Prime Minister. I want to talk about the registration, and I will come to the Prime Minister. Your question, Senator. Your question, Senator.
Not about the public.
Order.
Not about the
Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Colbeck. Minister Wong, please continue.
As I said yesterday, adverse finding made by New South Wales Health automatically flows through to the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, which is the national regulator.
First supplementary, Senator Ruston.
Point of order.
I think the time's expired.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, time had expired. I've confirmed that with the clerk as well. So first supplementary.
All
So
right.
Senator Ruston, first supplementary.
So the New South Wales Police has launched an investigation into the incident, with the New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Bragg calling it a sad day for the country. Is the AFP investigating this incident to determine whether any Commonwealth crimes have been committed and whether these individuals would be subject to the mandatory minimum sentences in the hate crimes legislation passed in this parliament last week?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister Wong.
Well, first, obviously the matter is being investigated by the New South Wales Police, as it should be, and I expressed the view, as I did yesterday, that those individuals should face the full force of the law. The AFP will provide any assistance that is needed by the New South Wales Police. Senator, I hope you, like I do, have faith in the AFP and in authorities.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
Point of order. I think my question was very clear about the mandatory sentencing in the hate crimes law, and I don't think the minister's gone anywhere to that point.
And your question also went to New South Wales Police investigating and the AFP, and the minister is being directly relevant to your question, Senator Ruston. Minister.
Thank you, President. Can I indicate that I'm advised that the AFP has offered assistance? The Senate would also be aware of Operation Everlight, which has been previously spoken about, and whose objective is to ensure, as Commissioner Kershaw says, that we not only protect Australians but the Australian way of life, and is specifically looking at how it is that authorities can more effectively protect against anti-Semitism.
Senator Ruston, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, will the Prime Minister hold a national cabinet to ensure the safety of Jewish Australians who were the subject of these death threats, and will he commit to taking real national action beyond a national database which only really serves to admire the problem?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister Wong.
Senator, through you, President, the Prime Minister engages closely and regularly with premiers and chief ministers, and has had closely with Premier Minns. What I would ask of the opposition: will you stand with us against anti-Semitism? Will you stand with us? Because the most effective way of standing against prejudice and hatred, and I say this as somebody who remembers John Howard, is for the parties across this chamber to stand together united against anti-Semitism. So I invite those opposite to show that principled leadership and bipartisanship against prejudice and hate. I invite Senator Ruston to do that. I will always stand against prejudice and hate, and I invite those opposite to stand with us against it.
Senator Marielle Smith. Just a moment, Senator Smith. Senator McKenzie, I do not intend to spend the next 55 minutes calling you to order. I remind you of 203. Senator Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. New Medicare bulk billing data out this week shows there are an additional 6 million bulk billed GP visits between November 2023 and December 2024, making it an average of 100,000 additional visits each week. How has the Albanese Labor government achieved these bulk billing rates, and how is the government working to further strengthen Medicare?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Smith for her question. And she knows, like all of us know, that bulk billing was in freefall when we came to government, and it's important to understand why. In 2014, Mr Dutton, the then Health Minister, tried to introduce a GP tax on every single Australian patient. And when Mr Dutton couldn't get that through the parliament, he then started the Liberals and Nationals' 6-year freeze of medical rebates. And at the time, a 6-year freeze, so went from a tax to a Medicare rebate freeze. Now, at the time, doctors warned Mr Dutton that they'd have to increase fees and stop bulk billing, but Mr Dutton arrogantly bulldozed ahead anyway, and that is why, Senator Smith, bulk billing was in freefall when we came to government. Now, Labor has responded with the largest increases to Medicare rebates in 30 years. And opened Medicare urgent care clinics across the country. We have tripled the bulk billing incentive to stop the freefall, and we have delivered 6 million additional free visits to the doctor last year. And nationally, 77.5% of all GP visits were bulk billed in December last year. Now, we know there is more to do, but what we have done has made a difference. And the Royal College of General Practitioners has described Labor's investment as a game changer. a game changer. Now, this stands, Senator Smith, in stark contrast to what they said when Mr Dutton was in charge of Medicare. They said he was the worst health minister in the history of Medicare. The worst health minister in the history of Medicare. We know Mr Dutton and the Liberals cannot be trusted with Medicare.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marielle Smith, first supplementary.
Minister, following a decade of cuts and neglect from the former Liberal and National government, Australians in regional and rural areas have found it more difficult to see specialist GPs. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to ensure there are more specialist rural GPs where they're needed so more Australians can get the health care that they deserve? Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Wong.
Senator Smith, and I invite National Party senators to listen to what the Labor government is doing for regional and rural Australia, because unfortunately those opposite the Liberal Party have had a long history of muzzling their junior partner. I think Mr Joyce knows what that feels like.
Order.
Senator Mackenzie
Order.
certainly knows what that feels like. And just like the Liberals have rolled the Nationals over
Senator
Rex,
McGrath, stop
the
the
Liberals
running
have rolled the
commentary.
Nationals on health. All during their time in government, we saw yet again the Liberals rolling the National
Senator
Party,
Duniam.
and together they made it harder for Australia's regional communities to see a doctor. Now, Labor's investments are changing that, and today the Health Minister, Mr Butler, has announced more specialist rural GPs coming to rural and regional Australia, more than 1,750 expected to begin government-funded training to become a GP, the largest cohort
Thank
of
you,
future
Minister.
GPs
the time
in
for
Australia's
answering has
history.
expired. Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Minister, the Albanese Labor government's strengthening Medicare agenda is delivering more doctors and nurses, more bulk billing and more urgent care clinics. What are the risks to this agenda that could undermine Australia's health system?
Minister Wong.
Well, the biggest risk to the Australian health system is Mr Dutton and the Liberals. And we know that because of Mr Dutton's record. We know what he's done before. Mr Dutton cut $50 billion from public hospitals. He tried to abolish bulk billing altogether. He tried to jack up medicine prices. He tried to make everyone pay a fee every time they went to an emergency department. And when he couldn't get his GP tax through, he froze Medicare rebates. Mr Dutton said to Australians that not enough of them were paying to go to the doctor. And then we had Senator Ruston, who said Medicare is not sustainable. Medicare is not sustainable. Well, Australian doctors don't trust Mr Dutton. That's why they said he was the worst health minister in Medicare history. So why would Australians trust him? Australians know they'll be worse off under Mr.
Senator McGrath.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Prior to the last election, the Prime Minister promised Australians on 97 occasions that he would reduce their power bills by $275. Did the Prime Minister deliver on his promise?
I'm sorry, Senator McGrath, I didn't catch the end of that question.
Did the Prime Minister deliver on his promise?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
President, can I first make the point that our plan is delivering cheaper energy right now. We delivered energy relief, which has cut $300 off power bills. The person who asked that question is of a party that has voted against every piece of energy bill relief that we have provided to Australians.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath.
I regret to do this. A point of order on relevance. The question was actually, did the Prime Minister deliver on his promise in relation to the $275 reduction that was made 97 times? I don't believe
Senator
the Minister
McGrath.
is anywhere near answering that.
Thank you. The Minister has started her answer. You've repeated the question, so I will continue to listen carefully.
I said at the outset, our plan is delivering cheaper energy right now. And we've delivered energy relief, which has cut hundreds of dollars of Australians' power bills. We delivered $650 in energy relief to small
Minister
business.
Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Point of order in relation to relevance.
I'm sorry, Senator Cash. I'm going to call the Senate to order. Senator Cash.
It's a point of order in relation to relevance. The question was the Prime Minister made a promise to the Australian people. Did he deliver it?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong, I'll remind you of the question and invite you to continue your response.
President, I've answered it. Our plan is delivering cheaper energy now. And it stands in stark contrast to the nuclear fantasy, which will push up power prices by $1,200 and deliver less than 4% of our energy needs. You don't like these facts,
Minister Wong,
do you?
please resume your seat. Senator McGrath.
There is a point of order on relevance that I wish to raise, and that is that the opposition's policy in relation to nuclear energy has absolutely nothing to do with the question I put to Senator Wong about the Prime Minister making his promises.
Okay, so what I'm advised is that talking about the opposition's policies is not relevant, but the minister is being relevant to the question that you asked Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Our plan is delivering cheaper energy right now, and I welcome the fact that the opposition want to avoid talking about their policy. Before the election, Australians are going to know precisely what your policy is, Senator McGrath. It will deliver more expensive energy, and it will cost $600 billion, and you would have to pay for it, and people will know about that.
Senator McGrath, first supplementary.
Prior to the last election, the Prime Minister promised Australian families cheaper mortgages. Did the Prime Minister deliver on his promise?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Can I point out, I'm not quite to the senator, that when we came to government, there was a 6. Inflation had a 6 in front of it, and now inflation has a 2 in front of it. So I would point out to those opposite that, in fact, under this government, you've seen inflation falling, you've seen unemployment falling, and you've seen wages rising. These are good things. Now, I know those opposite don't wish to see higher wages, and I know those opposite don't wish to understand what's happening with inflation.
Senator McGrath.
I'm sorry, President, to do this to you, but a point of order on relevance. Senator Wong has once again referred to the opposition when the question was very clear in relation to whether the Prime Minister delivered on his promise to deliver cheaper mortgages.
Thank you, Senator McGrath. I will draw the minister to your question. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I wanted to also point out, I'm not sure where, I wanted to point out also that the government has passed a range of policies which have and will assist homeowners with their mortgage payments and with the price of houses and the supply of houses. One of them is the Help to Buy Shared Equity scheme.
Has expired. Senator McGrath, second supplementary.
Thank you. The Prime Minister also said prior to the last election that, and I quote, "When I make a mistake, I'll fess up to it, and I'll set about correcting that mistake. I won't blame anyone else. I'll accept responsibility." End of quote. When will the Prime Minister admit to Australians that he promised them cheaper mortgages and cheaper electricity, and all that he's delivered is a cost-of-living crisis?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
President, it is the case that we teach our children that they should acknowledge their mistakes, and I look forward to Mr Dutton acknowledging his mistake around the GP tax. I look forward to Mr Senator McGrath acknowledging his mistake,
Minister
which
Wong.
was you don't like to
Wong,
admit your mistakes.
Please resume your seat. Senator McGrath.
President, I wish to raise a point of order in relation to relevance. That the question was about the Prime Minister and whether he has admitted that he has made a mistake in relation to delivering a cost of living crisis. It was nothing to do with Peter Dutton or myself.
Thank you, Senator McGrath. I do note the minister had just started her response, but I will remind her of your question. Minister Wong.
I'm very happy to get to our record of high wages, lower inflation and lower unemployment. I'm very happy to talk about that. But I think Senator McGrath and Mr Dutton should acknowledge their mistake of $50 billion cut from public hospitals and a GP tax on every Australian. And I think it would be good if they could acknowledge their mistake, which is at $600 billion funding for a nuclear scheme, a nuclear fantasy, for more expensive power. More expensive power that will deliver 4% of Australia's grid. So, I'm all for accountability, Senator McGrath. We've yet to see it from Mr Dutton. We've yet to see it from Mr Dutton.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator McKim.
President, my question's to the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator McAllister. Minister, fires have been burning in the Tarkine Wilderness for 10 days now. Fire boundary maps published by the Tasmanian Government show that the grove of Huon pines on the upper Harmon River burned last night. This grove contained the largest known Huon pine on the planet, a tree that was estimated to be 3,000 years old, making it one of the oldest trees in existence. It's now in ashes, which is devastating. The same fire is now threatening two other significant groves of Huon pines on the Wilson River. These are ancient paleo-endemic ecosystems that exist nowhere else on the planet. Why wasn't more effort put into extinguishing these fires in their early stages 10 days ago now? And what is your government doing to ensure that the protection of these globally significant ecosystems is given the priority it deserves?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Senator McAllister.
Thanks for the question, Senator McKim. Senator McKim, you're a former parliamentarian in the Tasmanian Parliament, and you know, Senator McKim, that firefighting is the responsibility of state and territory governments. And I have been in regular contact with Minister Ellis, who is the minister responsible for emergency management in Tasmania, and we've spoken about the challenges facing first responders in your part of the world. One of the things that is distinctive about fighting fires in the Tasmanian context is that there are a lot of wild places, and there's a lot of amazing communities too, Senator McKim, and our government seeks to be the best partner that we can to the Tasmanian Government as they seek to gain control of this particular set of events. We have deployed the National Large Air Tanker to Tasmania to assist in firefighting efforts. We have also deployed one of the heavy lift helicopters to assist Tasmania in these firefighting efforts. And I will make this additional point, Senator McKim. This is the first high-risk weather season where those assets have been available at all. And the reason that they're available is because our government came to office understanding that more would need to be done to deal with emergencies and to deal with natural disasters. And that is because all of the advice that we have from scientists is that natural disasters are going to become more frequent and more intense. Now, our government accepts that science. It's not clear to me that the people opposite us do, but it is on that basis and the experience of communities across Australia that we have made the investments that we have, increasing funding in the National Aerial Fleet, increasing funding for a national stockpile, and standing up a national emergency management agency that can support states and territories at times
Minister
like
McAllister. Senator McKim, first supplementary.
Minister, acknowledging other priorities and the importance of safety for fire responders, will you commit to continuing to stay in touch with the Tasmanian Government to ensure that saving these globally unique ancient ecosystems, which are at the core of Tasmania's Gondwanan heritage, is given the priority that it deserves?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, Senator McKim. And your question is apposite because actually this is an enterprise that rewards collaboration. And I do work to stay in touch with my state and territory colleagues because as I've indicated in my response to your primary question, they do lead on these questions. They do lead on the response, but we are in a position to provide support. And what that requires is me working with each of those ministerial counterparts to understand the circumstances that they are facing. I can tell you also that the National Emergency Management Agency, a new body established under our government, maintains very regular, if not daily, contact with fire chiefs, commissioners and other personnel in the emergency management system around the country. And indeed, as we speak, we are of course actively engaged in the circumstances continuing in Queensland, the recovery there and monitoring the cyclone which is forming off the northwest coast of Western Australia.
Thank you, Minister McAllister. Senator McKim, second supplementary.
Minister, 9 years ago now, the Greens led a Senate inquiry into the 2016 fires that devastated the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area, and we made a series of recommendations on how to respond better to fires like the ones we are seeing now, including by hitting them hard and hitting them early. Why have successive federal governments, including yours, ignored many of the recommendations we made?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, I dispute the premise of the senator's question. This government has, in fact, made very significant investments to improve the Australian government's capacity to support states and territories, not just in relation to our response to natural disasters, but also to improve the resilience of communities around Australia. Your question referred to the benefits of moving early once an ignition has been detected, and I know from speaking to fire chiefs around the country that these principles are embedded in many of the ways that fire chiefs are responding to some of these very difficult circumstances. We, of course, also, and I acknowledge Minister Watt here, have established the Disaster Ready Fund. This fund, a $1 billion fund, has already had 2 rounds where we are making investments in a range of measures that can support resilience, including investments in early detection technologies.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bilyk.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Women and Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Gallagher. This week, the Albanese Labor government responded to 2 Senate inquiries on women's health that made recommendations to improve reproductive and menopause health care in Australia. The government has taken these inquiries seriously by delivering a $570 million package of women's health measures that will give women more choice and save women and their families thousands of dollars. How does the government's women's health care package respond to the Senate inquiries and deliver for Australian women?
Thank you, Senator Bilyk. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Bilyk for the question and, of course, again for the work of all of my colleagues in the Labor caucus who work so hard to make sure that we are addressing areas where women have not been given the support that they deserve, and in relation here, particularly to access to appropriate health care. And I do want to acknowledge the work that's been done in this chamber through this term of parliament on the Senate Sexual Reproductive Inquiry and the Senate Menopause Inquiry. The inquiries heard from Australian women and health advocacy organisations about the long-standing issues with support for women's health care, and the Albanese Labor government has listened. In addition to the inquiries, Minister Carney and Minister Butler have been informed by extensive consultation with women, with healthcare providers, advocacy groups and the National Women's Health Advisory Council. We know from all of that women too often experience delayed diagnoses, have their pain dismissed and struggle to get the support they need. Women need for their government to take their health care seriously. We've listened and we have responded. A significant package, $573 million, demonstrates our commitment to making sure we are addressing those areas of need. This package includes the first PBS listing for new oral contraceptive pills in more than 30 years, more choice, lower costs, better access for long-term contraceptives, more Medicare support for women experiencing menopause, the first PBS listing for new menopausal hormone therapies in over 20 years, more endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics treating more conditions, contraceptives and treatment for uncomplicated UTIs directly from pharmacies for those women who are on a healthcare card, and where cost becomes prohibitive. These packages will save women and their families thousands of dollars over their lifetimes.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bilyk, first supplementary.
Thank you for that response, Minister. Not only will this funding assist women with their healthcare choices, it will also help women with their economic security. Chief Executive Women has found that, on average, women retire earlier than men due in large part to their health. How will this package, particularly the menopause initiatives, support women in the workforce?
Good question. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I thank Senator Bilyk for the question. This is a package that recognises that women bear a higher cost for their health over their lifetime and that there has been a gap in quality and responsive health services for women. We know that this has real impacts on women, not just in bringing down the costs of health treatment through this package, but avoiding the costs that women bear when they can't access quality health care. Chief Executive Women has pointed out that, on average, women retire earlier than men and 12 years earlier than they want to, due in large part to their health. This obviously has huge impacts on that woman's life, on her economic security into retirement, but also for our economy. Employing just 5% more people aged 55 or over could add $48 billion to the Australian economy. And Monash University has also estimated that women's labour force absence costs $72 billion in lost GDP annually. This package goes to making women's healthcare more affordable, more accessible and giving women more choices.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Bilyk, second supplementary.
The Women's Health Package adds to a huge amount of work that the Albanese Labor government has done to repair Australia's health system after a decade of coalition neglect. How would Australian women be impacted if the government had not done the work to repair the health system?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we know that those opposite, given the chance, want to cut Medicare if they got back into government, and we know that because we only have to look at their record. Well, we only have to look at the record. What happened when they were last in government, when Mr Dutton was the worst health minister, voted the worst health minister ever in the country? Bulk billing was in freefall, a GP tax was on the table, froze the Medicare rebate for 6 years, cut $200 million out of emergency departments, voted against making medicines cheaper and threatened to cut $50 billion from public hospitals. That is the record. We don't need to imagine what it would be like. That is the record. And in terms of the women's health package, there was very quick support from those opposite. But I wonder why none of that happened when they were in government for a decade. Why did none of that happen when they were in government? It's taken a Labor government to fix it.
Thank you, Minister. Time has expired. Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Watt. Yesterday, the government announced changes to the help debts don't stop people from getting home loans. There are 50,000 people with help debts from Tassie who I'm sure were very pleased to hear it. But the government has made no change to fix a system that's made to punish graduates. A graduate on an average income is paying $2,000 more than they need to, all because help debts don't count someone's yearly payments before charging interest. Why hasn't the government changed the timing on indexation?
Minister Watt.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks very much, Senator Tyrrell, for the question. I do appreciate getting questions from Senator Tyrrell because I think Senator Tyrrell has asked me more questions than Senator Cash has in the entire time that I've been in the industrial relations portfolio. In fact, it was the 7th of September 2023 that Senator Cash last asked a question about industrial relations.
Minister Watt.
She went.
Minister Watt, I am going to draw you to Senator Tyrrell's question.
I think Senator Tyrrell will appreciate this, and I will get to the point shortly. So Senator Cash went the entire year of 2024 without asking an industrial relations question, and that's because she knows her record is so bad.
Minister Watt. Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you, President, for drawing Senator Watt back to the question. Can we?
Thank you. Senator Watt, when I draw you back to the question, I do expect you to be drawn back to the question.
Thank you, President. Thanks, Senator Tyrrell. Senator Tyrrell, we share your interest in supporting graduates when it comes to their help debts. We have, as you would be aware, I'm sure, announced a couple of different measures to assist in that regard. First of all, I think it was this year's budget, it may have been last year's budget, we adjusted the indexation rate for university graduates and also for VET graduates as well. There's been a lot of attention on the benefits to university graduates from these changes, but equally they benefit graduates from vocational education and training courses who've taken up loans as well. So that indexation rate has been adjusted to try to make life easier. We've obviously also made a commitment that should we be re-elected to a second term in office, then we will discount the debts owed by graduates of either universities or vocational education by 20%, something that I think has been very well received by students and graduates right around the country, including in Tasmania. Of course, we know that Mr Dutton and the Coalition opposed that measure, just as they have opposed every single step that we've taken to assist cost of living for your constituents in Tasmania. But in addition, you would have seen this week, Senator Tyrrell, that we've made an additional announcement about helping graduates with their home loans through changes in HELP, and we'll continue to take that
Minister.
work
Senator
up.
Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Last year, the government made changes to help debts that they'd be indexed either by CPI or WPI, whichever was lowest. This will save a graduate $0 this year. But that graduate would actually save money this year if the timing on indexation was changed. Why did the government prioritise changes that don't save graduates money now instead of a change that would save them money every year?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Tyrrell. The government was particularly prompted to act in terms of the indexation rate for those university or VET loans because of the high inflation that Australia was experiencing when we first came to office. It's well understood that inflation was much higher when we came to office than it is now, due to the work that we've undertaken to get inflation down, and the indexation rate that we set in the budget was designed to deal with that high inflation environment that we inherited when we first came to office, and that did last for the first 12 months or so of our time in office. Thankfully, we've now managed to get inflation down. That's the actions of the Albanese government. 2 surpluses in a row. We didn't bother making back-in-black mugs. We actually just delivered surpluses. We actually just got it done. We didn't need mugs. And in the process, we brought inflation down, which is obviously good news for university and VET graduates, as it is for the entire Australian community.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Labor says they're all about helping students and young people with the cost of living. You could help them now, but you won't. So why are you making them pay more on their help debt than they need to?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Tyrrell. Well, obviously, I've already explained the reasons for the indexation rate changes and the fact that now that inflation is significantly lower, that's good news also for university graduates in terms of the indexation of their loans. I do have to disagree with you on one point, though, when you say that we haven't helped university students, or I can't remember the exact words that you used. Not only have we taken action as a government around help loans and indexation rates, but we've assisted students in a whole range of other ways. The increases that we've made to rent assistance have been particularly useful for students. I think I'm right in saying it's the biggest increase in rent assistance that any government has made in decades, a 45% increase in rent assistance. Students are obviously big beneficiaries of that. The work that we've done around increasing bulk billing, anyone on a low income, whether it be a student, an unemployed person, an elderly person, benefits from that. Of course, the energy bill rebates, and let's remember who voted against every single one of them, all of those people over there.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Chandler.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The Australian government-funded organisation Creative Australia has announced that Khaled Sabsabi will be Australia's artistic representative to the Venice Biennale. Mr Sabsabi features the dead Hezbollah terrorist leader Nasrallah in his artworks. With such appalling anti-Semitism in our country, why is the Albanese government allowing a person who highlights a terrorist leader in his artwork to represent Australia on the international stage at the Venice Biennale?
Excellent. Thank you, Senator Chandler. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Senator, I wasn't aware of the facts as you outlined in your question until now. I agree with you that any glorification of the Hezbollah leader Nasrallah is inappropriate. and I've expressed those views previously, and I'll certainly get further information for you.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Chandler, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Hezbollah is a listed terrorist organisation in Australia, and Hezbollah has committed the vilest of atrocities. Why then is the Albanese government allowing taxpayer money, Australian taxpayer money, to fund an overseas trip for Mr Sabsabi when he has featured the dead Hezbollah terrorist leader Nasrallah in his artwork?
Excellent question.
Thank you, Senator Chandler. Minister Wong.
Senator Chandler, I refer you to my first answer, which I think responded directly to some of those points. And I would say to you, you would see from the government's actions, as well as what I have said, and the Prime Minister has said, that we condemn Hezbollah. We condemn Hezbollah unequivocally.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Chandler's second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Mr Sabsabi has previously produced artwork promoting Osama bin Laden and a series of 9/11 images of the aircraft hitting the Twin Towers titled "Thank You Very Much." Will the Albanese government immediately reverse the decision for Mr Sabsabi to represent Australia at the Venice Biennale?
Thank you, Senator Chandler. Minister Wong.
I refer to my first answer, Senator, which was no. I know that you really want to make Senator Cash. If you could just let me answer.
Simple answer: yes.
Order. Order.
Senator, I wasn't aware of this until you asked me. I certainly will get advice, and I share your concerns about Hezbollah.
Senator Van.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. Minister, at the last election, the government campaigned on an emissions target of 43%. Commentary at the time said that it was supported by voters and therefore a factor in the election. The government legislated this target in 2022 and it is now incorporated throughout the Australian economy. Can the Minister tell us what is the importance of Australia setting international emissions targets?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Senator Van, you are right. We went to the last election seeking to bring some measure of consistency and predictability to climate change policy. It had been a policy area which was the subject of chaos and dysfunction under the previous government, and it was clear that our national interests would be best served by a return to a predictable and orderly approach to this policy area. When we first came to government, as you recall, we sought to establish our emissions target in legislation. We also set to establish a governance arrangement that would allow us to track and monitor our progress and also to take advice from the Climate Change Authority about how we were progressing and any future arrangements. All of that has occurred. And there are a number of reasons why it matters to us, through you, President. It matters because Australia is exposed to the realities of climate change. And Australians know that the climate is changing, and all of the scientists tell us that our climate is changing. And that impacts rainfall, it impacts heat, it impacts fire weather, and it impacts a whole range of sectors of Australian society, including the farm sector, communities, fisheries, a whole range of areas where a change in climate makes a real difference. And our best chance at dealing with that lies in being part of the international community and supporting international efforts to reduce emissions. We've set about doing that, but we also make, I think, the obvious point that our economic interests lie here too. There is a global market for low-carbon products and services, and we want Australians to be part of that market. We want the jobs and opportunities that come with a low-carbon world to be part of the future for Australia.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Van, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Australia and other Paris Agreement signatories have undertaken to update their targets every 5 years. The deadline for countries to submit their new targets for 2035 was Monday this week, the 10th of February. Minister, can you assure the Senate that the government will set a 2035 target, and when will you set it?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, as I indicated in my primary question, in 2022 we legislated the Climate Change Act, and that was with the broad support of members of this parliament. And that Act enshrined both our national targets under the Paris Agreement and a formal process for determining the 2035 target. And that process, as I indicated earlier, requires independent advice from the Climate Change Authority before any target can be set. The authority is yet to provide that advice, but it has been extensively consulting and is considering the issues and the broader international context. The Climate Change Authority Chair has said that they need time to consider international developments before it delivers its advice, which is entirely appropriate. Our target will be robust and responsible and informed by the experts at the Climate Change Authority. And this is an approach that has been backed by industry, by serious climate voices in the broader sector.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Van, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. As you stated earlier about the importance of our international agreements and given the significance of these targets to voters, do you believe both major parties should commit to a 2035 target before the upcoming federal election so that voters are fully informed?
Van, it is not for the minister to be speaking on behalf of the opposition, but I will invite the minister to answer your question in the best way that she can. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President, and thank you for your clarification. Senator Van, I think I've just provided you with an answer already about the government's approach to this and the fact that we are reliant on the advice to be provided to us by the Climate Change Authority, and that approach is one that has been broadly endorsed, not just in this place, but by many of the stakeholders that we work with. I do think that Australians, when we go to an election, will be very clear that there is one party that has a track record of taking this issue seriously. We have worked very carefully to put in place an architecture based on evidence that would allow us to do the work necessary to obtain the benefits of participating in a global decarbonisation effort and to do so in a way that protects Australians' jobs and industries. That's the approach we have taken in this term, and that is the approach we intend to continue to pursue.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing Minister for Trade, Senator Wong. President Trump has announced a 25% tariff on steel and aluminium exports. If these tariffs come into effect without an exemption for Australia, more than $200 million worth of exports could be jeopardised. A senior Trump advisor has even claimed that Australian companies are flooding the US aluminium market. Given the Prime Minister spoke with President Trump earlier this week, Minister, can you confirm whether there has been further government contact with the Trump administration about these tariffs, or are we just hoping this problem goes away?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator, the first point I'd make is that Australia and the United States have a very strong economic relationship, a very strong trade relationship, very strong investment relationship, underscored by the Australia-US Free Trade Agreement. I would make the point that the United States has had an unbroken trade surplus with Australia since 1952. And I would say to you, Senator, that we are working very closely with the Trump administration to realise the benefits of our strong economic partnership. You would have seen the engagement from my first visit, where I had the honour of being the first Foreign Minister from Australia to attend a US presidential inauguration. You would have seen I had the privilege of engaging with Secretary I know that it's Thursday of the last sitting week. Secretary Rubio, and I know that there's a little bit of joviality, but this is serious. This is about the nation engaging with the United States, and was privileged to engage both directly with Secretary Rubio and also through the Quad meeting. You'll also see that the Defence Minister and Deputy Prime Minister engaged recently as well. The Prime Minister did have a call with President Trump. It was a constructive and warm discussion. The Prime Minister made a strong case for Australia to be exempt from tariffs on steel and aluminium, and as you would have seen from both the President's words and the Prime Minister, some of us are actually trying to. This is the US relationship, Senator McKenzie. This is the US relationship.
Thank you, Minister.
Perhaps
the time has expired. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Steel production in Australia starts with iron ore.
Order.
Steel production in Australia starts with iron ore, the majority of which comes from my home state of WA. Minister, if your government fails to secure an exemption, unlike former Prime Minister Turnbull under the first Trump administration, what's your plan for protecting WA jobs?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Wong. Order. Order. Order.
Well, unlike some of those in this chamber, we are 100% focused on the interests of Australia. And we think that the alliance with the United States, the economic relationship with the United States, despite Senator McKenzie's interjection, should be bipartisan and should be bipartisan.
Order. Order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. We are pleased that the President is giving great consideration to the exemption. We will continue to press our views. Obviously, the US administration has made clear, both before and after the election, that President Trump and his administration intends to do things differently, and they have said about implementing that agenda, which was the agenda the American people voted for. So we will continue to engage and press Australia's interest, as you would expect.
Senator Payman, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. My question was specifically for WA, but that's okay. Amidst the cost of living crisis, the national housing crisis and the climate change emergency, we still managed to cough up $800 million to ship off to the US as the first payment towards the AUKUS submarines, which I don't think is in the best interest of Australians. Yet the US treats us with the same contempt as it does its worst enemies. Minister, is this how friends treat each other?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Wong.
Senator Payman, I appreciate that you don't support AUKUS, but I think, if I may, that the tone of your last question flies in the face of what you're proposing in your first. But we are in the process of an engagement with the US administration. We will do so very clearly in Australia's national interest, and we will do so professionally, and we will do so consistently. In terms of AUKUS, I appreciate that you have a different view to the government's. We believe AUKUS is in Australia's national interest. We also believe it is an important aspect of our relationship with the United States and the United Kingdom. So on this we are not going to agree. So I disagree with what you put in your question. We'll continue to engage, as is appropriate, with our principal strategic ally and the world's largest economic power.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKenzie. Senator McKenzie. Minister Watt.
Oh, wow.
Minister Watt, unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you for your protection, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister.
Order. Please. Order. 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 Senator Watt. Order. Senator McKenzie, please continue.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Minister Wong. Could you please outline to the Senate how much the average mortgage repayment has increased since May 2022?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and I'm sure that someone will provide me with precise details of the figures soon. But what I would say to you, Senator, is when you were in government, and I appreciate. Well, I am providing a question, an answer to a question about inflation. I know those opposite find it hard to recognise some of the laws of economics.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Order. Senator Mackenzie.
On relevance, Madam President, and to assist with the paper flurry, my question wasn't about inflation. It was actually about mortgage payment increases.
The minister understood your question because she said she would get you that information. So I'll call her to continue with the response, and I will listen carefully. Senator Ayres, I've called you about 4 times in about 5 minutes. Minister.
Thank you, President. Senator Mackenzie says she's not interested in inflation. Well, I would have thought. I thought that was the basis of her.
Minister Wong. Order. Senator Cash, you've got one of your own senators on her feet. Senator Mackenzie.
Madam President, I'd asked you to request Senator Wong to withdraw that comment, please.
Minister Wong.
No.
Order. Senator Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie, resume your seat. Senator Ruston, resume your seat. I will come back to you. You made a reference to inflation. You're not in an argument with me. When you rose about your point of order, you spoke about inflation. I am happy to review the tape, but I clearly heard that. Order. Order. I'm not debating with the bunch of people on the front bench. Senator Ruston. Senator Ruston had a point of order and I sat it down.
If you would call me, I'm always happy to withdraw, and I withdraw. But the point I was making is to you, Senator, is that am I still on the point of order?
No,
I can respond in the question.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston, yes.
To your point of order, my point of order related into the adverse reflection that one of the ministers on the front bench made in relation to Senator Mackenzie, which was completely uncalled for and was an adverse reflection on her. No, it was nothing to do with long lunch. It was actually a personal comment about Senator Mackenzie, and I think Senator Ayres knows what I'm talking about.
Okay. All right, Senator. Okay. No. Order. Order. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator McGrath. I have called order. As you should know by now, I take personal reflections very seriously, and I always ask senators to withdraw. I didn't hear the comment, but Senator Ruston, it is not helpful to me to say a minister, one of the ministers. I will ask. I'm happy to ask ministers. Please resume your seat. No, Senator Ruston, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath, I've just finished telling the chamber that I take points of order seriously, and you made a joke about it. I am going to ask if there was an adverse comment on the front bench for that senator to withdraw, and to withdraw in a proper spirit.
I'm now aware of it because Senator Ruston mouthed it to me, and I withdraw it.
Thank you, Senator Ayres. I am a little confused. I think Senator Wong was on her feet. Thank you.
Thank you, President. And can I just be clear? I understood that Senator Mackenzie was saying that an answer in relation to inflation was not relevant to an answer about mortgage rates. Exactly. And my point is inflation is the key thing that governments can do in relation to mortgage rates, Senator. the Reserve Bank, the independent Reserve Bank, which should be independent despite what Mr Dutton might have said, the independent Reserve Bank sets mortgage rates, sets the cash rate. Governments can do what we can to reduce inflation. Inflation under us has a 2 in front of it. Inflation under you has a 6 in front of it. And what I would say to you respectfully, President, that a question about mortgage rates, particularly given that it is not governments which sets mortgage rates but the Reserve Bank, it is quite relevant to talk about inflation. And if the opposition want to say that it's not relevant to talk about inflation, they are demonstrating with respect the same economic incompetence that the nuclear fantasy policy demonstrates.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. They were the good old days. Minister, Australians are struggling under a cost of living crisis. Could the minister please outline how much the cost of food has increased since Labor came to power? And for those playing along at home, the average mortgage cost has increased by $50,000 since Labor came to power.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong, first supplementary.
Well, the cost of living has been really difficult for many Australians. We acknowledge that, which is why we put in place tax cuts for every Australian that you voted against. It's why we put in place cheaper medicines, which you voted against. It's why we delivered more bulk billing, which you don't support. It's why we provided energy bill relief, which you voted against. So, Senator, it is the case that we have seen increases in the cost of living. We have seen Australians struggling. It is a good thing that we see inflation down and wages up and unemployment out. But we know there is a long way to go, and what we also know is that Mr Dutton would simply make things harder for Australians, that Australians would be worse off under Mr Dutton.
Order. Senator Hume, stop the running commentary. Senator Mackenzie, second supplementary.
The minister doesn't know how much food has increased since Labor came to power. It's probably better to be, and less embarrassing if she just said she didn't know and sat down. Minister, under the Albanese government we have a cost of living crisis, including 12 interest rate rises, energy bills rising by $1,000, living standards collapsing, 27,000 businesses going bust, and a record-breaking household recessions. Isn't it clear that Australians cannot afford another 3 years of a Labor government?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. The time for asking has expired. Minister Wong.
Thank you very much, President. Well, you know what Australians can't afford? They can't afford Mr Dutton. They can't afford Peter Dutton. They can't afford the bloke who thinks that a GP tax is good health policy. They can't afford the bloke who thinks that $600 billion is worth a nuclear fantasy. They can't afford the bloke who has been clear that he will cut government services to the tune of in excess of $350 billion. That is what Australians can't afford. And they can't afford a government that seeks to keep wages deliberately low. That seeks to keep wages deliberately low. I mean, we know that Mr Dutton actually wants to return to the low-wage economy that the coalition have always worked to achieve.